Is being modest really all about the clothes you wear? Is it all about women wearing skirts and having long hair, men not wearing shorts and wearing pants and keeping clean shaven? Is that what all of modesty is about? Or is it a little more complicated than that? In today's episode of Acting Up with Tom, we're going to talk about it. Hey guys, before the actual start of this episode, I just want to let you all know that, again, these episodes are not meant to attack any person, any church, any group. These episodes are meant to be my issues with, or my points where I think it's a little more complicated with oneness Pentecostal doctrine. These episodes and these videos are not meant to attack the UPCI, the ALJC, the PAW, any of those organizations. There are great Christians in all those organizations. There are great people in all those organizations. There are bad Christians in Assemblies of God. There are bad Christians that are Lutherans, that are Catholics, that are Orthodox. It doesn't matter your denomination so much as it does matter, are you following what Christ told us to do? So these episodes, guys, are not meant to attack anyone. I also ask in the comments, even if you do disagree with the UPCI or you disagree with me or any disagreements, to keep it civil and to keep it Christ-like. But again, guys, please just keep it civil, keep it Christ-like, and don't forget also to like, subscribe, and share the video. It really helps out. I'm at like 77 subscribers now, which is, unimaginable. I never thought when I started this I would get to 77. I knew it was possible, but I never thought I would actually get there. So thank you guys, everyone who subscribed. Please stay tuned and let's get into the video. Modesty. This is one of those things with the UPCI where I'm kind of in agreement in some aspects with. Now, this is going to be a weirder video because we're not going to really be going over much scripture because modesty isn't salvific. Now, there are some people in the Oneness Pentecostal organizations that will teach it that way. There are some people who will preach that modesty is part of your salvation, but that's not biblical. And a lot of the UPC people I even know are very hesitant to say that. Now, the problem you have here with the UPC and with a lot of Oneness Pentecostals is that modesty is directly tied in for them living a Christian lifestyle. And their definition of modesty is a little different than I would say other definitions. Meaning that their definition of modesty means a very specific thing as opposed to maybe modesty being more of a condition of the heart and a intent of how you're dressing. So for example, in the apostolic churches, a woman being modest would be wearing skirts. But in my opinion, and I think this is generally more along lines with just ground logic, I think a woman could be modest wearing pants. I think the issue is that modesty and the distinction from gender kind of get melded together within oneness groups. And what I mean by this is that they assume that because skirts are women's clothing, which that's not even universally accepted, but because it's assumed that they're women's clothing, women wearing skirts is modester because it's showing less, and for some reason skirts are more modest. When I think any girl watching this knows for a fact that there are skirts that are more revealing than any pair of pants, and there are pants that could be more modest than a lot of pairs of skirts. So the issue here isn't necessarily one of biblicalness, because I do believe the Bible does call us to be modest and to be holy and to be set apart. I think the issue here is that the UPC was created back in an era where men's clothing and women's clothing were dresses and skirts, and men's clothing were pants. And the UPC is kind of stuck to their guns on that. And a lot of other oneness churches have as well, as stuck to their guns on that. The thing, though, is this, that skirts aren't really necessarily universally considered women's clothing. Women's clothing, for example, let's go to Scotland. In Scotland, they wear the kilts as men. That's considered men's clothing. But if we look at kind of sometimes how some people in the UPCI may look at this, they'll say, no, women's clothing are skirts, men's clothing are pants. Well, if you go to Scotland, no Scottish person's going to say that, oh yeah, it's a woman's clothing when men wear kilts. And then you go to the Middle East and you go to those countries, and a lot of times robes and dresses are more of the predominant wear of what they're wearing over there. And again, those robes may look like a dress over here, but no one would consider it a dress over there or female clothing. So what we notice instead is that in those cultures, there's always a distinction somehow, meaning that there's a distinction of women are looking more feminine and men are looking more masculine. And I really think that's the heart of the issue here, is that men and women were created separately, and we're to remain separate. We're not to meld the two together in our dress, according to the Bible. Now, I think this is gone because of when the UPCI was created. It's at that time frame, women wore dresses and men wore pants. But now we're in a culture where there are women pants and, not really men's dresses, but there are women's pants. And these pants are very obviously for women. They very obviously are meant for them. And at the end of the day, when women wear these pants, it's very obvious, even if they're not that revealing, even if they're modest pairs of pants, they're obviously for women. Like if you saw a man wearing them, they wouldn't look right. So where I'm getting with this is that honestly, when it comes down to modesty, it's a conviction. And I feel like a lot of the UPC teaches it this way, partially, at least the experiences I've had, they will partially say it's a conviction, but if you've been a Christian for long enough and you really love God, you're going to do it anyway. Now, I'm not saying this is every church. Other churches could be different. But from the experiences I've had, it starts off as, yes, it's something you have to be convicted to do, or it's something that God will convict you to do, but you should do it anyway because it's important that you do it and it's modest, which kind of they contradict each other. You don't have to do it because it's only really a conviction, but you do have to kind of do it because God wants you to do it. Biblically, God never commanded women only to wear dresses and men to only wear pants. When these laws were written, they were both wearing robes. Now, the robes were different. There was still a distinction between male and female, but the modesty standard where there's a strict dress code is not laid out in the Bible. Women and men are to be distinct in their dress according to the Bible, and I agree with that, that aspect biblically of the UPC's teaching. What I don't agree with is what a lot of preachers seem to do is emphasize the skirts and say, if you don't wear a skirt, you're not a modest woman. That's not biblical. That's not biblical at all. It's a conviction. It's a conviction that God has to give you. For example, one of the convictions of the church that I went to is that one of the things a lot of men didn't do is wear shorts. I was never convicted against shorts, but I didn't wear them because of the fact that, other men didn't want me to wear them. But at the end of the day, I don't think I'm going to go to hell, or I don't think I'm going to get in trouble, or I don't think I'm hurting God by wearing shorts. Actually, I know I'm not, because there's nothing wrong with them. And I don't think a woman who's a good, devout Christian, reads her Bible every day, loves God with all her heart, mind, and soul, and wears pants, is doing anything wrong. Now, again, I'm not saying that all the UPC believes that a woman wearing pants is doing something wrong. I know a lot of people in the UPC who say that if you are a good, godly woman, you have to wear skirts. That's not the universal teaching. I've had plenty of people on all these videos comment, well, that's not what my church teaches. Well, guys, I've only experienced the UPC as much as I can. If you're experiencing something different, awesome. That's great. You're experiencing something more biblical. But at the end of the day, this is more to explain, and this series is more to explain to you guys why I left and what my disagreements were with the UPC. And the standards was never really a huge disagreement. It was more of just like, no, I think you can still be a very good Christian that loves God and be modest and wear jeans as a woman. And I think you can be, a man, a Christian, and wear a kilt if that's your cultural thing. So basically, that's kind of my take on modesty, guys. At the end of the day, to sum it up, it's conviction. If God tells you you should wear skirts, wear skirts. If God tells you to stay away from leggings, stay away from leggings. If God tells you as a man to stay clean-shaven, stay clean-shaven. If he tells you not to wear shorts, don't wear shorts. But if God hasn't told you this, don't feel peer pressured into following a group of people and their ideas, especially if God hasn't told you it. Now, there is a difference if, for example, you want to be on a leadership team of a church and they say you have to follow these standards. Well, at that point, it's time for you to pray and ask God, is this the leadership team you want me to be on? For me, with the church I attended, that's something I had to pray on. There were standards I disagreed with, and that's one of the reasons why I left the church that I left. It really wasn't me leaving the UPCI that made me leave that church. It was more of I didn't agree with leadership standards. So that's something we as Christians have to do. When there's leadership and they have their standards, you need to ask the question, do I agree with these standards? If you don't agree with these standards and they're not biblical issues, like, if one of the standards is you have to be only having one wife, well, I'm sorry, if you disagree with that, you got to check yourself. But if one of the standards is you have to, wear skirts and you aren't convicted to do that, if you feel God's calling you on that leadership team, then you're going to have to be obedient. But if God's not calling you to that leadership team, then maybe it is time to find a new church. But again, guys, it's all about conviction. It's all about letting God guide you. This episode is going to be a little shorter and more informal because I don't necessarily disagree with everything they teach. I just more disagree with how some people prioritize it so much. I don't think it's as important as a lot of people think. But I love you all, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Have a wonderful one. And again, I'm sorry that this video was a little more informal, but I've been getting my butt kicked at work this week, and I promised one of these videos would come out. I wanted to do standards first because I hadn't looked into salvation enough to get a video out that I was comfortable with. Love you guys. Have a great one, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.